Paolo became interested in Maricel, and the man also deliberately liked to flirt, and began to dare to touch Maricel's sensitive parts, initially rejected by the woman, but finally willing and resigned whenever his stepdaughter needed to channel her lust. Therefore, there was a hidden relationship between them that her father did not know about. Hey there! Welcome back to our channel. Today, we're diving into yet another spine-chilling real-life event that happened in this world. This time, our story takes us to Dagupan City in the Philippines. And let me tell you, this case is definitely one for the books. It's strange, unique, and might just leave you scratching your head in disbelief. So, what's the full story behind this case? Let's dive in and break it down together. Before we dive into today's story, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and share this story with your friends. It helps a lot. Now, let's get into it. This story begins with a doctor named Alfonso, who worked at a regional hospital in Baguio City, Philippines, for nearly 2 decades. Born in Dagupan in 1952, Alfonso was widely respected for his warm personality and dedication to his work. His patients and co-workers admired him, and he was well loved in the community. In 1982, he married a nurse, and together they had 2 sons, Paolo, born in 1984, and Benigno, born in 1989. Both sons made their father proud, graduating from a prestigious university in Istanbul. Sadly, their mother passed away in 2012 due to illness, leaving a void in their family. Alfonso retired from his hospital position in 2009 but didn't slow down. Instead, he opened a private clinic where he hired younger doctors and primarily supervised the operations, enjoying his retirement while staying active. In 2014, Paolo, the eldest, married Felicia, and the couple moved to Alaminos City. By 2015, they welcomed a son, and life seemed perfect. Paolo worked in the automotive industry, while Felicia was a civil servant in taxation. Meanwhile, Benigno pursued a career in graphic design, working remotely most of the time. His job eventually took him to Singapore, where he managed his company's branch office. With both sons busy with their own lives, Alfonso was often home alone, accompanied only by Bernadette, the household assistant. Even then, he spent much of his time at his clinics. In March 2015, Bernadette confided in him that she was separated from her husband and living alone without children. This prompted Alfonso to consider marrying her, not just for companionship but also so someone could care for him in his later years. Despite his age, 63 at the time, Alfonso was still active and healthy, though his gray hair hinted at his years. After discussing it with his sons and receiving their support, he married Bernadette in July 2015. She was 35, and they even celebrated with a honeymoon across several European countries. After the wedding, Benigno would occasionally stay at his father's house when visiting the Philippines. He grew fond of his new stepmother, appreciating her calm and caring nature. Bernadette didn't demand much and adapted easily to her new role in the family. She treated Alfonso with genuine affection, always attentive and supportive, which didn't go unnoticed by the family. Even though they hoped to have a child together, it wasn't meant to be. Still, Bernadette's quiet and loving demeanor brought peace to the household. Benigno observed how she naturally took on her role without complaint, respecting her for how she cared for his father. In her own gentle way, Bernadette had become an integral part of their family. In October 2016, tragedy struck at Mr. Alfonso's clinic when the security guard was killed while defending the property during a robbery attempt. The shocking incident forced the clinic to shut down for a few months. Although the police eventually caught the thieves, the loss left the guard's family in a difficult situation. His widow, Maricel, and their 5-year-old son were left grieving and struggling to make ends meet. Mr. Alfonso stepped in to provide financial help for the family, but it wasn't enough. A month later, Maricel began visiting him more frequently, asking for additional support since she had no job and needed to care for her child. It was then that Alfonso had a bold idea. He decided to marry Maricel. He approached Bernadette, his wife, to share his thoughts and sought her approval. Framing it as a way to help Maricel and her son, He made it clear he wanted her support in this decision. Without consulting his sons, Paulo and Benigno, Alfonso went straight to Maricel's family to propose. They quickly agreed, and by January 2017, Alfonso, then in his mid-60s, was married to 34-year-old Maricel. When Paulo and Benigno eventually found out about the marriage, they were shocked. Their father hadn't informed them, let alone invited them to the wedding. Still, knowing their father's wealth and his tendency to make impulsive decisions, they accepted the situation and moved on. During a visit home, Benigno checked in with Bernadette to see how she was handling everything. She assured him she was fine and that she got along well with Maricel. Benigno also noticed that one of the upstairs rooms had been given to Maricel, and their father alternated nights between the two wives' rooms, claiming it was his way of being fair and just. Meanwhile, Paulo's life was falling apart. The company he worked for went bankrupt, leaving him unemployed and turning to alcohol to cope. His marriage with Felicia quickly deteriorated, with constant arguments escalating into fights. Attempts to mediate and repair the relationship failed, especially since Paulo had become violent. In April 2017, the couple divorced, with Felicia gaining full custody of their child. With no job and nowhere else to go, Paulo moved back to his father's house in Baguio City. Though disappointed in his son's failure to maintain his marriage and career, Alfonso allowed him to return. Paulo occasionally tried to help at the newly reopened clinic, but his lack of interest and expertise made him unreliable. Benigno, still working remotely, sent Paulo job leads, but Paulo always had excuses. The job wasn't a good fit, the pay was too low, or he wasn't qualified. Instead, Paulo spent most of his time asking his father for money, hanging out with his old college friends, drinking, playing games, shooting pool, and wasting his days eating and sleeping at home. Since Paulo often saw Maricel, his father's newest wife, he began to develop an interest in her. He started teasing her at first, but over time, he grew bolder, testing boundaries and touching her inappropriately. At first, Maricel rejected his advances, but eventually she gave in, resigning herself to the situation whenever Paulo sought her out. Their secret relationship carried on behind Mr. Alfonso's back, with Paulo carefully timing their meetings around his father's schedule with his wives. Meanwhile, Maricel's young son, unaware of everything, slept in another room. Tiring of this arrangement, Paulo shifted his attention to his first stepmother, Bernadette. She had always respected Paulo, but when he pressured her, she reluctantly complied with his demands. Their affair continued for weeks, even months, without Mr. Alfonso suspecting a thing. Despite his behavior, Paulo's father often urged him to settle down, suggesting he find a wife instead of staying single. Paulo, however, always made excuses, claiming he wanted to secure a good job first. But his actions told a different story. He showed no real effort and spent most of his days asking for money, partying, and wasting time. By early September 2017, Paulo had begun to target a neighbor, Patricia, who often stayed home alone while her husband worked out of town. Coincidentally, Patricia had been a college classmate of Paulo's, so their conversations always flowed easily when they bumped into each other. One evening, Paulo insisted on visiting her despite her refusals. The situation escalated when he tried to touch her inappropriately, leaving Patricia in tears. Thankfully, she managed to escape through the back door, leaving Paulo panicked and fleeing the scene. On September 9, 2017, Patricia's husband, Dominic, returned home, and she fearfully told him about what had happened. Shocked and angered, Dominic learned that Paulo had moved back into his father's house. The couple reported Paulo's behavior to the local police, but with no solid evidence to support the claim, the complaint wasn't pursued further. Frustrated, Dominic went directly to Mr. Alfonso's house to confront him. He found the doctor and his two wives at home, but Paulo was out with friends. Dominic explained what Paulo had done to Patricia, but Alfonso refused to believe him. He defended his son, insisting that Paulo was an educated man who would never behave that way. He also argued that their family was wealthy enough for Paulo to have his pick of women, suggesting he wouldn't need to pursue someone like Patricia. The confrontation ended with Dominic being pulled home by his wife, leaving Mr. Alfonso's household in tense silence. Bernadette and Maricel didn't dare say a word, even though they both knew Paulo wasn't the honorable man his father believed him to be. The next day, September 10, 2017, around 2 p.m., Dominic stayed home from work to care for Patricia, who had developed a fever. He considered reporting Paulo's actions to the neighborhood head but hesitated, fearing he'd be dismissed as a liar again without solid evidence. From his kitchen window, he could see Mr. Alfonso's house just 3 doors away. There, in the garage, he spotted Paulo casually holding a water hose. In a sudden fit of rage, Dominic grabbed a knife from the kitchen and stormed out. Without a word, he charged at Paulo and fatally attacked him. By the time the neighbors arrived, it was over. Calmly, Dominic handed the knife to one of them and said, "Please take me to the nearest police station. I'm turning myself in." The incident shook the entire neighborhood. Everyone was stunned, including Mr. Alfonso. Refusing to believe his son could have done anything wrong, he claimed Dominic had acted out of jealousy, insisting that Paulo was more successful than him. He even accused Patricia of fabricating her story to tarnish Paulo's name. But when Patricia tearfully defended herself, she pleaded, "Why would I lie? What could I possibly gain from making this up?" Still, Mr. Alfonso accused the couple of plotting against his family for money. But Patricia stood firm, denying any such motive. "I'm not after money," she said through her tears. "I'm just telling the truth." As the investigation unfolded, testimony from Patricia's son corroborated her account, aligning with the events she described. Things took a turn when Bernadette and Maricel finally broke their silence. In court, they confessed that Paulo was far from the virtuous man his father believed him to be. They revealed details of his inappropriate behavior and how he had manipulated them within the household. To add to the shock, Benigno flew in from Singapore to testify. He revealed that his own relationship had ended because his girlfriend had been harassed by Paulo. The incident left her so traumatized that she cut all ties with Benigno and refused to have anything to do with their family. The revelations left Mr. Alfonso stunned. He never imagined that both of his wives had been involved with Paulo, nor that Benigno harbored such resentment toward his brother. To Alfonso, Paulo had always been the perfect son, a reflection of himself. Paulo was diligent in worship, compassionate, and always quick to help women in need. The thought of his eldest son mistreating someone like Patricia, a former college friend no less, seemed impossible. The humiliation became too much for Mr. Alfonso, and he eventually refused to appear in court, unable to face the shame. Meanwhile, news of the case reached Paulo's ex-wife, Felicia. She testified that during their marriage, a young woman had accused Paulo of misconduct. Felicia admitted they had paid the woman off to keep her quiet, though it had led to arguments between her and Paulo. She stayed with him for a time, needing financial support for her sick father, but his behavior grew increasingly intolerable, leading to their divorce. When the court summoned the woman Felicia mentioned, she refused to appear and only agreed to speak with the judge by phone. Dominic's lawyer, a well-known advocate for journalists in the Philippines, made a compelling case for his client. He explained to the prosecutor that killing Paulo had been a last resort. Dominic had tried multiple times to report Paulo to the police and to confront Mr. Alfonso, but his pleas were dismissed as baseless accusations. Meanwhile, his wife's safety and dignity were at risk. The lawyer argued that the law had failed them, forcing Dominic to act in self-defense to protect Patricia. "If her husband doesn't protect her, who will?" the lawyer asked. On February 19, 2018, the Baguio City Municipal High Court reached its verdict. Dominic, then 35, was found guilty of second-degree felony assault, resulting in Paulo's death. He was sentenced to 10 years in prison, with the possibility of parole after serving 7 years. However, his legal team, supported by a women's rights organization and Patricia herself, filed an appeal in Dagupan's district court in May 2018. After 6 grueling trials, their persistence paid off. The court overturned the previous ruling, declaring Dominic not guilty. He was released but required to report regularly for the first 40 days. As for Mr. Alfonso, he chose not to pursue an appeal over his son's death, deciding to let the matter rest. Over time, He also separated from both Bernadette and Maricel, opting instead to live with Benigno and his youngest son's wife. What lessons can we learn from this story?